Welcome to Life Stories, where the deepest wounds often come not from strangers, but from the people we swore would never hurt us. Imagine serving your country for over a decade, dodging bullets in war zones, cracking enemy codes, only to return home and realize the real enemy was sleeping in your bed, laughing with your children, sipping wine in your kitchen. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about love, twisted into a weapon, and a soldier who must use his training not on the battlefield, but to protect his own family from within. What would you do if the person you trusted most became the greatest threat to everything you hold dear? Stay with us, because this is the kind of story that will break your heart, challenge your judgment, and leave you questioning the true cost of loyalty. Now, let's begin. Staff Sergeant Eli Monroe sat alone in a cramped apartment just outside Colorado Springs, the late evening light casting long shadows across the kitchen floor. His fingers toyed absently with the worn silver band on his finger, turning it round and round, as if hoping it would somehow bring clarity. On the wall behind him, a framed photograph clung stubbornly to the past. His wife Ashley, all sunshine and denim, arms draped around their two children, Connor and Grace. A family portrait taken just weeks before his last deployment, before everything unraveled. It had been a week since Eli came back from a classified counter-terrorism mission in northern Africa. The army had offered him 2 weeks of leave. He'd taken none. Instead, he returned to a home that didn't feel like his anymore. The kitchen still smelled like lavender cleaner, the kind Ashley always used. But the silence was wrong. Too clean. Too curated. Like someone had scrubbed the house of him entirely. He had noticed the signs long before that evening. Unreturned texts. Video calls ending abruptly. Connor's nervous glances when he asked about Mom's book club. Grace's quiet confusion when he said he missed them, and she replied, "But Mom said you like being away." But it wasn't until he opened the small safe in his home office that his stomach turned to stone. The safe had been tampered with. Not forced, Ashley wouldn't do that. No, this was careful. Precision work. Almost professional. Inside, nothing seemed missing. But Eli's instincts, honed over 14 years in intelligence, were screaming. Documents had been handled. A digital token device used for encrypted access to Army servers had been nudged a quarter inch to the left. And that wasn't the kind of mistake he would make. He didn't tell anyone. Not yet. That night, while the kids slept in their rooms, Connor sprawled across his bed, Grace clinging to the same stuffed dog he'd given her before his second deployment. Eli scrolled through weeks of security footage from the house. Most of it was uneventful, until 2:17 a.m., 6 days ago. Ashley walked into the office. Not alone. The man was tall, clean-cut, dressed in athletic wear like he belonged in a Lululemon ad. He moved confidently through Eli's personal space, like he'd been there many times. Ashley laughed quietly as he lifted her onto Eli's desk, his desk, and kissed her like a promise made in the dark. Eli sat frozen, hands clasped so tight the knuckles turned white. But it wasn't the betrayal that haunted him. It was what happened next. The man picked up Eli's army laptop, turned it in his hands and asked the question. "What's his current assignment?" Ashley hesitated. "He never tells me details, but he mentioned something about drone signal intelligence in East Africa last month. He's quiet lately, tired." "Keep him that way," the man said. "I need to know when he logs in from here. If the token's used on site again, let me know immediately." Eli paused the footage, rewound, played it again. That wasn't an affair. That was an operation. By morning, Eli had a name. Derek Shaw, the man Ashley introduced to friends as her personal trainer. The one she claimed helped her stay fit while Eli was gone. A quick search through public databases showed nothing out of place, but Eli's clearance gave him access to more. Deeper. Darker. Derek Shaw didn't exist before 2019. The social security number was recycled from a deceased child in Pennsylvania. Employment history forged. And 3 flagged transactions, totaling nearly $80,000, deposited into offshore accounts linked to Ashley's new consulting business. The lies weren't just emotional. They were strategic. Eli took a long walk that afternoon through a nearby park, the Rockies looming like silent sentinels in the distance. Winds swept through the trees, cold despite the spring sunlight, and he felt the gnawing realization that made his breath catch. His family had become a security threat. Later that day, Ashley found him in the garage, standing beside a shelf of old boxes marked deployment gear. "You're back early," she said cautiously. "Surprised you noticed," Eli replied, not looking at her. She stepped closer, all softness and charm. "You've barely said 2 words to me since yesterday. Can we just talk?" He turned, finally meeting her eyes. "Talk like we used to, like when we trusted each other." Her gaze faltered for just a moment. "You're being paranoid, Eli. You always think the worst. And sometimes I'm right." A tense silence stretched between them. Then, with a sudden calm, he stepped forward. "Tell me something, Ash. Does he know about the safe in my office? About the biometric device in the study drawer? Or the fact that Connor accidentally saw my laptop password last week?" Her face went pale. In that instant, Eli knew. She wasn't just manipulated. She was participating. Whether willingly or out of desperation, it didn't matter. She had crossed the line. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered, but her voice was hollow. Eli leaned in close, his voice ice. "Then start praying I believe that." He turned and walked out of the garage, heart pounding, a plan forming with every step. He was no longer just a father or a betrayed husband. He was a soldier, and his war had come home. What would you do if the person you loved became the greatest threat to everything you hold dear? Can trust ever be rebuilt once it's been weaponized? The true battle begins not in the field, but in the quiet halls of the home. Continue to Part 2 as Eli Monroe prepares to confront not just his wife, but the enemy behind her. The first thing Eli noticed when he opened the front door was the smell. Lavender. Not the comforting kind that reminded him of late nights with Ashley, back when Grace was still teething and Connor snuck into their bed to chase away nightmares. This was stronger, artificial, like someone had oversprayed to cover something up. A crime scene in disguise. He set his keys down slowly, every sense on high alert. The house was too quiet. He passed the living room, spotless. The kitchen, dishes gleaming, the fruit bowl unnaturally full. When he reached his home office, the door was ajar. Eli never left that door open. Inside, nothing looked obviously disturbed. The safe was still locked, but something was off. A drawer slightly open. His Army-issued notebook missing from the desk. The fingerprint scanner on the locked file cabinet blinking faint red, a failed access attempt. He sat down, breathing through the rising dread. Someone had been here, again. And they wanted more than wine and whispered promises in the dark. He pulled up the security camera feed from the encrypted app on his phone. Nothing in the past 2 days. The cameras had gone dark, just like last time. Eli had resecured the system with military-grade backups after the last breach, hidden protocols Ashley wouldn't know how to bypass. But someone had. That meant one of 2 things. Either Ashley had help from inside the network, or she was smarter than he'd given her credit for. Either way, the walls were closing in. That night, after putting Grace to bed, a chapter of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince read aloud through a tightening throat. He sat beside Connor on the couch. "Did Mom ever ask you about my work?" Eli asked gently. Connor blinked, caught off guard. "Like, what do you mean?" "Anything. Where I go, what I bring home, the passwords I use, anything like that." Connor hesitated. Just for a second, but it was enough. "She asked about your laptop," he admitted. "Said she was worried you were hiding something, that maybe you were doing stuff you couldn't tell us about. Bad stuff." Eli's stomach sank. "She made it sound like she was trying to protect us," Connor added, eyes unsure. "Like you were dangerous." A silence stretched between them. Eli swallowed hard. "Do you think I am?" Connor shook his head instantly. "No, I didn't know who to believe. You're always gone. She's always here." And there it was. The emotional fracture more devastating than any intel leak. His son, caught between 2 versions of the truth. That night, after the kids were asleep, Eli called the only person he trusted enough to speak freely. Marcus Bell, his old comms partner. They hadn't served together since Afghanistan, but Marcus still handled encrypted tech support for select DoD projects and had eyes where others didn't. "I need a trace run," Eli said quietly, "on Derek Shaw. I don't care how deep you have to dig." Funny you mention it, Marcus replied. I just flagged something on him today. His gym membership pings at 2 different locations an hour apart. Same timestamps. Either he's teleporting, or he's using a cloned ID, Eli finished. Bingo. There was a pause. You were right to be suspicious, man, Marcus added, his voice lower now. We're getting whispers out of Langley. There's a new wave of domestic infiltrations. Families have cleared personnel. They're calling it Operation Hearthstone, using emotional proximity instead of surveillance tech. It's intimate warfare. Eli's throat tightened. Ashley's involved. Are you sure? I'm not sure of anything anymore. Another pause. Then Marcus asked carefully, do you still love her? Eli closed his eyes. Did he? He remembered the girl he'd met at a Veterans Day fundraiser, laughing at his awkward jokes, her hands slipping into his like it belonged there. The one who held his head against her chest when he woke from nightmares. The one who sent care packages with drawings from the kids and notes that smelled like her perfume. But that woman had vanished somewhere between the 3rd deployment and the 5th forgotten anniversary. What remained was a stranger with familiar eyes. I love what we used to be, he said finally. But she sold that off, piece by piece. And now, whatever was left of Ashley Monroe might be too far gone to save. The next morning, Eli called in a favor to a quiet contact at Army Counterintelligence. He provided the file he'd compiled on Derek, alias tracking, facial pattern matches, financial anomalies, everything. Then he added one final note. Request surveillance on Ashley Monroe. Discreet. I believe my wife has become an unwitting asset in a hostile infiltration effort. My children may be at risk. He hit send and stared out the window where Grace chased autumn leaves across the backyard. Her laugh drifted through the glass, light, bright, painfully pure. He would not let anyone take that from her, not even her mother. What do you think Ashley's true intentions are? Has she crossed the line beyond redemption, or is she trapped in something bigger than herself? As Eli prepares to expose the truth, a devastating revelation is about to force him to make an unthinkable choice, one that may cost him everything. Don't miss what comes next in Part 3. The snow was falling when Eli Monroe stood outside the courthouse, a gray blur of ash-white flakes settling on the brim of his uniform hat. The air was still, almost reverent, like the world itself was holding its breath. He looked up at the building, its cold stone walls, the American flag limp in the windless sky, and tried to imagine what would be left of his family once the doors closed behind him. Inside, Ashley sat across the courtroom, dressed in a charcoal blazer 2 sizes too big. Her hair was tied back, her face pale, eyes darker than he remembered. The woman he had once married, once worshipped, now watched him with a blankness he couldn't quite read. Was it resignation? Defiance? Remorse? The children were not here. Grace was with Marcus's wife, learning how to braid her hair into French twists. Connor was at a debate tournament, his first state-level competition. Eli had told them it was a grown-up thing, nothing they needed to worry about. He didn't have the strength to explain that their mother's rights might end today. Ashley's attorney began with the same tired argument. Her client had been coerced, manipulated by a foreign asset, trapped by charm and subtle pressure. She had never intended to endanger her family. She was a victim. She deserved redemption. Eli remained silent, hands folded, jaw still. Then it was his turn. He didn't speak of betrayal or revenge. He didn't quote classified briefings or flash military medals. Instead, he stood and looked straight at the judge. I am not here to punish my wife, he began, his voice calm but full. I'm here because my children deserve a life built on truth, on safety. And right now, they don't have that. He turned slightly, meeting Ashley's eyes. She was once the person I trusted most. I don't know who she is anymore, but I know who Connor and Grace are becoming. And I know they need space to grow without being used, intentionally or not, as tools in someone else's war. He sat down. The silence that followed was not courtroom silence. It was heart silence, the kind that lives between a breath held and a soul breaking. The judge took the bench, reviewed the documents, the statements, and the FBI's final report. Then, without drama or delay, she delivered the ruling. All parental rights were terminated, permanently. Ashley would have no further contact, direct or indirect, with the children. Ashley didn't cry. She simply stared down at her hands, one thumb tracing the faint outline of a wedding ring that was no longer there. Eli walked past her without a word. Outside, the snow had thickened. It dusted the world in silence. That night, Connor came home late, medal in hand, eyes bright with pride. Grace ran to greet him, arms flung wide, the hallway bursting with laughter and the chaos of siblings reunited. Eli watched them from the kitchen, and for the first time in a long while, he let himself breathe. He was still broken in places, wounds stitched shut, but still aching in the cold. Yet his children were laughing. They were alive and whole, and theirs was a world not yet devoured by secrets. Still, something lingered. He found it 3 weeks later, tucked in the bottom of an old keepsake box Ashley had left behind, one the FBI hadn't deemed relevant. A letter, unopened, dated 6 months before her arrest. He debated burning it. Instead, he sat in his study, poured a single glass of whiskey, and opened it with hands steadier than expected. Eli, if you're reading this, it means things have gone farther than I ever imagined. Maybe I've already hurt you. Maybe you hate me. But I need you to know something. This started because I was lonely. It ended because I was weak. And somewhere in between, I lost myself completely. He never threatened me. Not at first. He made me feel seen, needed. You were always so far away. I told myself I was just talking, just letting off steam. And then it became something else. By the time I realized what I'd given him, what he'd taken, it was already too late. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I hope someday you'll remember who I was before all this. I hope you'll tell Grace I loved the way she hummed when she painted, and that Connor's laugh was the best sound I ever knew. I hope you won't erase me completely. I hope you'll be okay. I hope they will be. Ashley. He folded the letter slowly, tears threatening but never falling. She had betrayed him, but she had also been lost. And maybe, in another life, if war hadn't stretched the distance between them to the breaking point, if he'd come home sooner, if she'd asked for help, maybe things could have been different. But they weren't. He stood up, walked to the fireplace, and tossed the letter into the flames. Watched the past curl and blacken. Then he turned toward the sound of Grace calling his name. 1 year later, Eli sat under the bleachers at Connor's graduation. The boy had grown into a man, tall, confident, kind. Grace sat beside him, holding his hand tightly as Connor crossed the stage to receive his diploma. After the ceremony, as they walked to the car, Grace looked up. "Daddy," she said, "do you ever miss her?" Eli paused. "Yes," he said quietly, "but I miss who she was, not who she became." Grace nodded, like she understood more than she should. As they drove home, Eli glanced in the rearview mirror, his children asleep in the back seat, heads leaning toward each other. The road stretched out before them, clean and bright, untouched by old shadows. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was running from something. He was heading toward something new. How did this story impact you personally? Which moment stayed with you the most? Comment 100 if this story moved you. Tell us where you're watching from. Share this video with someone who values deep, powerful life stories. Thank you for watching Life Stories.